ChoralEd. Welcome to episode 26 of ChoralEd. I'm your host, Micah Bland. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Today, as we continue our series on sight reading, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about audiation, also referred to as inner hearing. So some of you might be asking the question, well, what exactly is audiation? You may use it extensively, like every day in your classrooms, or maybe you've heard of it, but you don't really use it, so you're not really sure what it is. Well, audiation is simply the ability to internalize pitch or music without producing any sound out loud. So if I were to ask you to sing Happy Birthday in your head right now, right, you are able to do that through audiation or inner hearing. Now, there's many different reasons why we might use audiation in the classroom. There's several purposes. The first and the most common is for the contest, for sight reading at contest or the festival. So there's of course, the performance part, and many states have a sight reading portion for your ensembles. And during this sight reading portion, the contest rules stipulate that you can chant, but you cannot produce sound during the rehearsal time, right? Only whenever you are performing for the adjudicators at that time during the sight reading portion that you can produce sound. There's different states have different rules, but in order to get around these rules in a legal way, we use audiation to practice pitch. But other than the contest, there's several other very important purposes for using audiation in the class. And the most important one is for us to be able to internalize music before we sing it. I want to read this quote to you from Lois Choksky, who says, quote, "Of all musical skills, inner hearing is perhaps the most important. One cannot produce a musical sound without first thinking that sound," end quote. So again, inner hearing and audiation are used interchangeably here, but we cannot produce a sound without first thinking about it. So any sound we produce, if I go do, do, my brain, we might not recognize it, very quickly goes, there's that pitch, here's that pitch, here's the pitch I'm going to sing. Or we audiate a sequence of pitches before we perform them. We also audiate text, the vowel shape. All these things we prepare in our mind before we actually produce a sound. Now, we do it so quickly, we don't really recognize it for some of us. But our students have to have developed this skill as they're still learning to sing properly. And so they're not as familiar with it. So this is why it's a great skill to develop. If you ever ask your students to think, or you have the phrase breathe, think, sing, or think, breathe, sing, you're asking them to audiate when you say think. It's also important in the musical realm for audiation that we internalize music performed by ourselves or by others, that we can recall this music. Your ability to recall Happy Birthday is your skill in audiation. But after a performance that we can reflect on what we just heard, and that is an audiation inner hearing skill. Now, when it comes to sight reading specifically, and audiation and sight reading, there are several challenges that we also face. The first is that sight reading and audiation requires significant musical independence, that they are on their own when they're audiating. There's no sound going on, and so it's all of what's going on in the students' heads. And the challenge along those lines is that we don't know what's going on in their heads. Are they actually participating, or are they just going through the motions? Yeah, teacher, I'm audiating, right? We have no idea. They could be thinking about lunch at that moment. And also, the more concerning is they could be practicing wrong intervals, wrong pitches during that audiation. We have no idea if they are producing the correct notes when they're audiating, because it's all in their head. And so some of the things we're going to talk about here a little later are related to helping alleviate those challenges. By talking now about some of the activities you can include to develop the audiation skill, some simple ones first, before we get to any sight reading elements. The first I would consider is having them audiate an element in any vocal exercise. For example, you might be singing, I love to sing. All right, now audiate the word love. I to sing. Or the word I, which is difficult because it's 2 notes. Love to sing. There's an important principle here I want to highlight, and that is whenever you have them audiate, to actually have them shape the mouth and do everything as if they were singing, just not producing any sound. Love to sing, right? That there's still the vocal mechanism is working and actually activating as if it were going to create that pitch, but we're not actually doing that. And that also helps you as far as some of the challenges in the sight reading, as far as having them, so you see, okay, they're mouthing the mouth shape, they're showing the hand signs if you're using hand signs and so forth. You can also have them do simple melodic dictation. Now, some of you, this might bring back thoughts and fears of your days in oral skills or ear training classes. But it's a great skill to develop because it requires them to internalize what they're hearing, right? Again, that's part of the audiation process, to internalize the music that they're hearing. And so you might say, well, my students don't understand the staff, how to notate music on a staff, and that's not needed for melodic dictation. It could be done through just, if you're using numbers, the 1s, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it may be. If you're using solfege, just the abbreviated solfege syllable name. So for example, do, do, re, do is the melodic dictation. D, D, R, R, D, R, D. You could have them write it all in one line. You could have them elevate pitches as they raise higher. Do, do, re, do, re. Have them write it like that as a stepwise teaching instructional tool towards writing on the staff. But you don't necessarily have to have them write it on what is a formal music notation. Yet they're still developing the skill of audiation. Some other ideas to consider is to have them audiate a familiar song. That you don't tell them what song it is, but you say, all right, you tell me what song this is after you audiate it. So as you can see on the screen here, well, has established the key, do, mi, so, mi, do. It starts on mi, audiate this song, and raise your hand when you know it. And so forth. Well, that's Mary Had a Little Lamb. You can use various songs to challenge them to use audiation and to determine. It also helps you as a teacher determine, are they being accurate in their audiation, right? And that's one of the challenges we talked about. So we can determine that by giving them familiar songs they should know. Now, they don't always know every song we give them, unfortunately. That's one of the challenges. They're not as familiar with some of these folk tunes or hymns or whatever you may use. But it allows you to figure out, okay, where are the challenges? Are they struggling with audiation, or are they have a pretty good grasp of it? Can they figure out a familiar song by audiating it? I just want to highlight here for a moment, stopping in rehearsal. And I've mentioned this before, but when we stop for a correction, all right, now go back to measure 5, and we go through this whole motion of basses. Here's your note. Do, 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 tenor, so, 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 mi, mi, altos, do, do, soprano. And we play it on the piano. All right, hold your chord, right, off, ready, go. We do this whole event to restart a song. We step away, we move to the piano if you don't have an accompanist, and we have to take time to do that. All right, what if instead we went, all right, measure 5, sing your first note. Great, here we go. Or measure 5, think your note, and you just go. This takes some trust on your part. They might have the wrong note. If you go, hold your note. Nope, altos, that's wrong. sing this, figure it out again, think again. Don't give them the note then, right? Make them work, make them audiate their notes before you continue on. So much we just give them their note. Here's your note. This is your note that you're supposed to sing, right? Instead of making them responsible in first audiating their pitch and then coming back in on the correct notes, right? Very simple approaches to kind of developing the audiation and inner hearing process. Now, talking about specifically sight reading and how teachers often use audiation in the contest setting is to have them audiate from beginning to end, right? And this could be 30, 40 measures of music, and they're audiating the entire thing. Now, for contest, you have to do that. That's kind of the requirements for the rules that you have to do. But with the challenges that we mentioned earlier, students are not necessarily audiating the correct pitches, and it requires that musical independence. And so the sequence of instruction I want to provide to you today helps to alleviate these challenges during the classroom instructional time as we develop this skill, not just say, all right, audiate, go, right? And there's never really any instruction on how to develop that skill, but students are just expected to audiate and do it perfectly, and that's it. And we have no idea if they're doing it perfectly because we can't hear inside their heads. So these steps are designed to gradually develop the audiation skill in our students. The first step, and some of these can be in different orders, I'll admit. They don't have to be in this specific order. The first step is to have them audiate the entire thing while you play their parts on the piano, right? There is that supporting element of, here are your correct notes, here's the correct rhythms to support them. Actually, one step before that is, I strongly encourage you to have individual sight reading assessments for your students, because that individual development of their skills will go a long way. So often they rely on the leaders in each section who are very strong sight readers, and they rely on them. So when you're auditing, they don't have that support from those leaders in those sections. And so developing their individual sight reading abilities will help you out a lot. So the next step after playing along while they audiate the whole thing is to have half the group sing while the other half audiates. And you can even have them switch in the middle of the exercise that you tell them beforehand. Measures 1 through 4, you all sing, you all audiate. Measures 5 through 8, you all sing, you all audiate, right? And switch it. And so there is still that support there as they audiate. Now those first two steps I don't spend too much time on because there's a little too much support in my opinion, right? We're playing it the whole time, or they're hearing pitch performed and sung the entire time in both those sequence of activities, right? Instructional methods. Where I like to spend most of my time, especially for the beginning singers, is the next step where we have them switch between audiating and singing. So there's moments now where there will be no sound. And that's every other measure. So odd measures, 1, 3, 5, 7, so forth, we sing. The even measures, we audiate, right? So there are still these checkpoints, every other measure, where they can see, am I on the right note? And am I coming back in at the right time, right? So pitch and rhythm is reinforced. That is not, you're on your own the whole way through these 8, 20, 30, however many measures you're doing, but there are checkpoints along the way where students can go, oh, I was off, let me adjust here. And it also builds this confidence, right, as they come in and out, audiating and singing. And so that musical independence and that confidence in sight reading and doing it on their own. That's what it's requiring of them when they audiate. We can also have them sing just beat 1 or beats 1 and 3. I don't usually use the 1 and 3. It's too much sing, stop, or sing, audiate, sing, audiate, sing, audiate. It's too much back and forth. And also beat 3 is not always a strong pulse in sight reading perhaps. Usually it is, but it's a little too much back and forth. Singing on beat 1, again, gives a great checkpoint of we've aligned here, And this is, I've come back into the right time, and I get a checkpoint of, am I on the right pitch still, right? A great option for that. And I start incorporating that personally around November, December, right? That we're audiating more and singing less as far as for that process in this sequence. Of course, we're still singing it all the way through and chanting, doing the whole process of chant, audiate, and sing. But in this audiation section, it also mixes up the monotony of every day chant, audiate, sing, chant, audiate, sing. It gets very boring for students, and it makes sight reading a little boring. But when we challenge them, okay, now I want you to audiate beats 2 through 4, sing beat 1, or every other measure. It's something different from the same old chant, audiate, sing that we do. From this point on, those 2 steps, I would say, first alternating measures and then singing beat 1, I spend the most time on, at least for the fall semester. At this point, you kind of mix and match the remaining exercises. One is to have them sing just beat 1 of every page or every line. Again, more audiation, less singing at certain points. But the very first beat, they sing of every line. So there again, there's still a checkpoint. You can have them, this is a little more unusual, sing all the tonic notes. This may be do. If you're in fixed do, it might be a little different. If you're in movable do, of course do. If you're in numbers, that would be 1. And so it's a little odd because you'll hear do, 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 do. You know, it's different parts at different times. And it's a little funny at times because the first time you do it, they might chuckle, right? Because they'll mess up. They might come in at the wrong time because there's more space in between and all you hear is do. But it reinforces the tonic note, again, checking pitch and checking rhythm, that they're doing it right at certain points. We can also have them sing or audiate the entire thing while the teacher plays the first note of every line, every measure. So they're auditing the entire thing. It's the less worrisome for the contest portion when we transfer to the contest preparation. But it still gives those moments of tempo and pitch correction. After this point, you can audiate the entire thing, and I strongly encourage you to start doing that at least 1 month before the contest if you're using it in the sight reading room at contests. This ensures that students are aware of this is what we're going to do for contests, not sing at different times, and so there's no kind of confusion or worry about will they come in and sing at the wrong time during the contest and be disqualified. At least a month. So February, March, you're implementing audiate the entire thing. But again, I hope you can see how these steps support those challenges of the requirement that students are musically independent, that there is no support as they do this. We also cannot tell if they're singing the right notes or if they're off for a good 5, 10, 15 measures. They could be off the entire time and we have no idea. And so these checkpoints progressively have less singing and more audiation as you progress through them. And it also gives some more unique, different activities to implement in sight reading than just the same old chant, audiate, sing, which gets very boring day after day as students do this. As always, thanks for watching. And I hope you continue to inspire the future leaders of our world through this wonderful gift we call music. Thanks.